You ever feel like you're running on a treadmill that's set slightly faster than your legs can move? You save a little bit of money, maybe you skip the latte, maybe you brown bag your lunch, you put a couple of $100 into a savings account, and then you look at the balance 6 months later and it looks exactly the same. It's pitiful, it's demoralizing. It feels like you are shoveling sand into a bottomless pit. You look at the wealthy, the people who seem to have money just effortlessly appearing in their accounts, and you think the system is rigged. You think they have some secret code, some insider information, some magic wand that you don't have. And you know what? You're partially right. The system is rigged, but it's not rigged by the government or the Illuminati or the banks. It's rigged by physics. We are going to talk about the physics of wealth today. We aren't talking about manifesting abundance or any of that spiritual nonsense. We are talking about mechanics. We are talking about mass, velocity, friction, and gravity. Because understanding money is exactly like understanding orbital mechanics. If you don't understand the forces acting against you, you are going to burn up in the atmosphere before you ever see the stars. There is a specific number, a specific threshold where the laws of physics change, where gravity stops crushing you and actually starts working for you. That number is $100,000. The late, great Charlie Munger, the right-hand man to Warren Buffett and arguably one of the most rational human beings to ever walk this floating rock, famously said, "The first $100,000 is a bitch, but you got to do it. I don't care what you have to do. If it means walking everywhere and not eating anything that wasn't purchased with a coupon, find a way to get your hands on that first $100,000. After that, you can ease off the gas a little bit." He didn't say that because he hates poor people. He didn't say that because he wants you to suffer. He said it because he understands the math of critical mass. He understands that in the financial universe, 0 to 100,000 is a completely different journey than 100,000 to 1,000,000. Let's look at this through the lens of astrophysics. Imagine you are a rocket. You are the Saturn V. Your goal is to get to the moon, which in this analogy is financial independence. The most dangerous, fuel-consuming, violent part of the journey is the launch. It is those first few minutes where you are fighting the entire gravitational pull of the Earth. Do you know that a rocket burns something like 90% of its fuel just to get off the ground and break through the atmosphere? 90% of the energy is spent just to get to the starting line of space. That is your first $100,000. When you are starting at 0, you are sitting at the bottom of a gravity well. The gravity is your cost of living. It is your rent, your food, your car payment, your insurance, your student loans. These forces are constantly pulling your net worth back down to 0. Every time you try to push up, gravity pulls you down. You save $500. Boom, your car needs new tires. Gravity. You save $1,000. Boom, your rent goes up. Gravity. At this stage, you have no momentum. You have no velocity. You are relying entirely on your own thrust, your labor, your income, your sweat equity to fight a force that is relentless. This is why it feels so hard. This is why it feels like you aren't moving, because mathematically, you barely are. You are fighting static friction. You are pushing a boulder that hasn't started rolling yet. Most people quit here. They burn through half their fuel, they shake and rattle, they get a few feet off the ground, and then they look at the fuel gauge, they look at how far away the sky is, and they cut the engines. They crash back down to the pad and say, "Space travel is impossible, the system is broken." It's not broken. You just didn't understand the energy requirements of the launch phase. Let's strip away the metaphor for a second and look at the cold, hard, depressing math of the beginning. This is what I call the valley of disappointment. Let's say you are a diligent saver. You are doing everything right. You put $10,000 into the stock market. You buy a nice, diversified index fund. The market has a good year, and you get a 7% return. 7% on $10,000 is $700. $700 for a whole year of waiting. You locked up your money for 365 days, and your reward is enough to buy a mediocre television or pay for half a month of rent. It feels insignificant. It feels insulting. Your brain, which is evolved to seek immediate dopamine hits, looks at that $700 and says, "This is stupid. I could have spent that $10,000 on a jet ski and had fun immediately. Instead, I waited a year for this." This is why people fail. They look at the absolute returns, not the percentage. $700 doesn't change your life. It doesn't even change your month. It's a rounding error.
When you have a small amount of capital, the compound interest isn't working yet. Well, it is working, but it's working on a microscopic scale. It's like watching bacteria grow. Eventually, it will take over the petri dish, but for the first few days, it looks like nothing is happening. This is the slog. The slog is the period of time where your investment returns are negligible compared to your contributions. This is the crucial concept you have to grasp. When you are going from 0 to 100,000, your portfolio performance barely matters. If you have $5,000 invested and the market crashes 20%, you lost $1,000. You can make that back by working a few weekends of overtime or selling some junk from your garage. The market doesn't drive your growth yet. You drive your growth. Your savings rate is the only engine that matters. You are the thruster. The investment returns are just a faint breeze. But here is where the physics shift. Here is where the magic happens. Once you cross that $100,000 threshold, the aerodynamics of your wealth change completely.
You have reached orbit. You aren't fighting gravity as hard anymore. You've escaped to the thickest part of the atmosphere. Let's look at the timeline, because humans are terrible at visualizing exponential functions. Our brains are wired for linear thinking. If we walk for an hour and travel 3 miles, we assume walking for 2 hours gets us 6 miles. But compound interest is geometric, not linear. It's a hockey stick. Let's assume you can save $10,000 a year. That's roughly $833 a month. And let's assume you get a 7% annual return. To get from 0 to your first $100,000, it will take you approximately 7.8 years. Nearly 8 years. That is a long time. That is a grind. That is almost a decade of saying no to the expensive dinners, driving the used car, and feeling like you aren't getting anywhere. 8 years of pushing the boulder. This is where the Munger quote comes in. This is the bitch part. You're doing all the heavy lifting. In fact, of that first 100,000, about 78,000 came from your own pocket, and only about 22,000 came from interest. You did 80% of the work. But now, look at what happens next. You keep saving the same $10,000 a year. You keep getting the same 7% return. To get from $100,000 to $200,000, it doesn't take 8 years. It takes about 5.1 years. You just shaved almost 3 years off the journey. Why? You didn't work harder, you didn't save more, but now you have a $100,000 employee working for you 24/7. That $100,000 is generating $7,000 a year on its own. It's like having a second person contributing to your savings. Now, let's go from $200,000 to $300,000. It takes about 3.8 years. Do you see the acceleration? It's getting faster. The gap between the milestones is shrinking. 300,000 to 400,000, 3 years. 400,000 to 500,000, 2.5 years. By the time you were aiming for your second million, you were generating $100,000 every couple of years just from growth. The velocity becomes insane. The friction disappears. This is escape velocity. Eventually, you reach a point, usually around the $300,000 to $500,000 mark, depending on your spending, where your money makes more money in a year than you can save. Think about that moment. Imagine you save $10,000 a year, but your portfolio grows by $30,000 a year. You have become the junior partner in your own life. Your capital is doing the heavy lifting. You are just along for the ride, steering the ship. This is the definition of financial freedom. The machine is running itself. But you cannot get there without surviving the first 7.8 years. You cannot get there without building the rocket. Now, I can hear the objections already, but the economy is bad, but wages are stagnant, but inflation. Yes, correct. The atmosphere is thicker than it used to be. Gravity is stronger. I am not denying that. The game is harder than it was for your parents. But pointing that out doesn't change the physics. Gravity doesn't care that you think it's unfair. The rocket equation doesn't care about your feelings on the consumer price index. The math remains the math. The only variable you can control is the thrust. So, how do we cheat the physics? How do we shorten that 7.8-year slog?
Because waiting 8 years to feel like you're winning is a long time, and frankly, most primates don't have the attention span for it. Since we established that investment returns don't matter much in the beginning, we have to focus on the other variable, the savings rate. The first $100,000 is not an investing problem. It is a savings problem. It is an income problem. If you want to reach escape velocity faster, you cannot rely on the 7% return. You have to add more fuel to the rocket. You have to brute force it. This is where you have to get aggressive. This is where you have to embrace a period of temporary insanity. I call this monk mode. If you are saving $500 a month, it takes forever. If you can find a way, any way, to save $2,000 a month, you cut the time to $100,000 down to roughly 4 years. You just bought yourself 4 years of your life back. How do you do that? You have to attack the equation from both sides. You have to decrease drag, expenses, and increase thrust, income. Decreasing drag means looking at your life and ruthlessly cutting the things that are weighing down your rocket. That $700 car payment we talked about, that is a massive anchor dragging behind your ship. Cut it. The luxury apartment, anchor. The subscription services, the dining out, the brand loyalty, anchors. You have to be willing to look like a weirdo for a few years. You have to be willing to live like a student when your friends are living like kings. They are burning their fuel to look good on the launch pad. You are saving your fuel to get to orbit. Who cares what you look like on the launch pad?
But there is a limit to how much you can cut. You can't save more than you earn, so the turbo boost comes from increasing thrust. The first $100,000 is usually built on the back of overtime, side hustles, job hopping, and skill acquisition. This is the grind phase. And I hate the hustle culture gurus who tell you to grind forever. Grinding forever is stupid. It leads to burnout and early death. But grinding for a specific mathematical goal, that is strategic. If you can pick up a second job, a freelance gig, or flip things on weekends, and throw every single penny of that extra income into your escape fund, you're essentially strap-on boosters to your main ship. Let's say you take a second job, bartending or driving Uber or coding websites, and you make an extra $15,000 a year. If you live on your main salary and invest that entire $15,000 plus your original $10,000 savings, now you are saving $25,000 a year. Do you know how long it takes to hit $100,000 saving $25,000 a year? 3.5 years. 3.5 years. That is nothing. That is a blink of an eye. You can do anything for 3.5 years if you know there is a finish line. And once you hit that number, you can quit the second job. You can move into a nicer apartment. Why? Because the rocket is in orbit. The physics have taken over. The compound interest is now generating the equivalent of that second job for you. This is what Charlie Munger meant when he said, ease off the gas. He didn't mean stop saving. He meant the desperate, clawing, frantic energy of the launch phase can stop. You can settle into a cruise. There is another aspect of the first $100,000 that is purely psychological, but it has real-world effects. It's what I call financial confidence. When you have $0, you are terrified. You are desperate. Your boss looks at you and he smells the fear. He knows you need this job. He knows you can't leave, so he underpays you, he overworks you, and you take it because you have no leverage. Gravity is crushing you. When you have $10,000, you're a little less scared, but you're still vulnerable. A bad car accident wipes you out. But when you have $100,000 in the bank, you walk differently. You negotiate differently. You enter a room with what we call walking away power. If your boss denies your raise, you can look him in the eye and say, okay, I think I'm going to explore other options. And you mean it. And he knows you mean it because you have a fortress of solitude backing you up. You have 2 or 3 years of living expenses sitting there generating their own gravity. This confidence often leads to making more money. People attract money when they don't desperately need it. Opportunities flow to those who have the capital to seize them. Maybe a friend wants to start a business and needs a partner with $20,000. If you're broke, that opportunity passes you by. If you have the first $100K, you can buy in, you can take risks, you can invest in yourself. The first $100,000 buys you the right to sit at the table where the real game is played.
Before that, you were just a spectator. You were just a consumer. Let's talk about the rule of 72 for a moment, because this is the cheat sheet for the physics of wealth. It's a simple mental math trick to estimate how long it takes for an investment to double. You take the number 72 and divide it by your annual interest rate. If you get a 7% return, 72 divided by 7 is roughly 10. Your money doubles every 10 years. This sounds great, right? But apply it to small numbers. If you have $1,000, in 10 years you have $2,000. Who cares? The doubling time is the same, but the mass is irrelevant. But apply the rule of 72 to $100,000. In 10 years, it becomes $200,000. In 20 years, $400,000. In 30 years, $800,000. That is without adding another single penny. That is just the physics of the universe doing its thing. This is why the start is so painful. You were waiting 10 years for your $1,000 to become $2,000. It feels like a bad joke, but you have to respect the timeline. You have to respect the gestation period of wealth. Think about bamboo. There is a species of bamboo that when you plant the seed, you have to water it and fertilize it every single day. For 5 years, you see nothing. No sprout, no stem, just dirt. You are pouring resources into the ground and getting zero visual return. This is the 0 to 100,000 phase. If you stop watering it in year 4, it dies. You wasted 4 years. But in the 5th year, the bamboo breaks the surface, and once it breaks the surface, it grows 80 feet tall in 6 weeks. Did it grow 80 feet in 6 weeks? No, it grew 80 feet in 5 years and 6 weeks. It spent 5 years building the root system, the foundation to support the vertical growth. Your first $100,000 is the root system. It is the invisible infrastructure that supports the skyscraper you were trying to build. If you try to build the penthouse before you build the foundation, the whole thing topples over. This is why lottery winners go broke. They got the height without the roots. They got the mass without the structure. So, look, I know it's hard. I know looking at your bank account after a year of saving feels like looking at a drop of water in a bucket. I know the Instagram algorithm is showing you 20-year-olds in Lamborghinis who claim they got rich in a week buying crypto. Ignore them. They are statistical anomalies, or more likely, liars renting the car by the hour. You are a scientist. You are an engineer building a machine, and building a machine takes time. You have to fall in love with the boredom. You have to fall in love with the grind. You have to detach your emotions from the daily number and focus on the trend line. Every dollar you save is a little worker bee you are adding to your hive. The first bee doesn't make much honey. The first 10 bees don't make much honey. But when you have 100,000 bees, you are drowning in honey. You are fighting the great filter. The great filter is the barrier that separates the poor from the wealthy. It is not intelligence. It is not talent. It is the ability to endure the slog. It is the ability to keep pushing the rocket when you can't see the stars yet. Most people filter themselves out. They buy the new car. They take the expensive vacation they can't afford. They eat the seed corn instead of planting it. They surrender to gravity. Don't be like them. Be the anomaly. Be the one who understands the physics. Once you hit that number, that magical 100,000, the clouds part, the shaking stops, the engines hum. You are in orbit, and from there, you can go anywhere. The first 100K is a war. The next 100K is a job. The next 100K is a hobby. And everything after that is just keeping score. So put your head down, check your thrusters, cut the drag, and push. Push until you break the atmosphere. Because I promise you, the view from up here is worth every single second of the struggle.